Good afternoon, everyone. Here we are again with the Blockchain Advisor podcast. I'm calling this podcast series Closing Rotation. Again, I want to be able to capture the stories of the people that really began modern derivatives trading. Today's old gangster, or I'm sorry, today's crypto Twitter and people who are in decentralized finance, non-fungible tokens, we're into decentralized lending, and all these things is so current and so popular conversation on Twitter and financially. But these guys who are in crypto Twitter, what do they know about the old days? What do they know about the foundations of the people that started the derivatives business with the foundation and founding of the Black-Scholes model in roughly 1973, which then led to the opening of the Chicago Board Options Exchange, and the rest is history. And I want to capture that history before it disappears. So today we have with us on the podcast, we have Mitch King. I was just telling Mitch before I clicked on the record button that Mitch and I, we joked around about Saab convertibles back in like the 1980s, but we never really had a conversation outside of that. And yet he is a pillar and a longtime participant in the options business. So Mitch, thank you so much for joining me. This is going to be a wonderful conversation because I'll get to know you after 40 years of, being in this space. So thanks for being with us.
Appreciate it, Billy. Thank you.
I'm really excited about this because I want to get to know you. And this has been a huge honor for me to interview these people. So Mitch, let's just start right at the beginning. So introduce yourself. Tell us, where you were born, where you grew up, what brought you to the options exchange, when did you start, who backed you, like everything. I want to know, like, let's go everything from 75,
You got to go
70,
back. Yeah, you got to go back.
73, high school, whatever, up until you started on the exchange. And let's just take me to 1980 for now.
In 1980. Well, I appreciate that, Bill. Thank you. And thank everybody for watching today. I grew up in East Rogers Park, real simple. I grew up right by the lake off of Howard and Greenview. And many of you who are as old as me remember Pop Milano's. But I grew up there and graduated from DePaul. And to be quite honest, that's how I graduated from DePaul. And I graduated with a degree in education and had absolutely no idea what I was going to do. Uh-huh. And in the fall of 76, to show you how I got on the trading floor, my wife worked downtown. And I was walking down the street and ironically just walking down LaSalle Street instead of Clark Street where she worked. And I met a girl that I knew from high school and grammar school. We joked for a little while and she asked me what I was doing. And I said, I just graduated. So just like you, I'm looking for a job. And she said to me, well, I'm going to be going to law school at night, but I work at the Board of Trade during the day and they need runners. And they would be happy to hire you. And I don't want to make myself look silly, but I remember saying it to her. I go, I need a job. I would love to work at the Board of Trade. All you got to do is tell me where it is and I'll be there. And it's honest to goodness truth. And we were maybe 50 yards away from it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. You could throw a stone and hit it.
I'll tell you. So I would like to say that I was destined to get there, but I worked as a runner for Garvey Grain, Board of Trade the next day, $80 a week.
That's about what I earned.
It was $80 a week. And just to jog everybody's memory, which I know if you were down there with me, if you went to Brokers on Thursday, the soup was only 90 cents. The cream of chicken soup.
I don't remember that, but it was the most delicious soup ever.
Right. Well, Mr. B made it with lard in those days. Now he doesn't, but it was 90 cents. So out of that $80, we were doing okay.
Right. We were living not large, but we were doing okay.
Right. And I was at the Board of Trade, and I'll tell you, the first day you walk on the floor, and remember it was on the 4th floor of the Board of Trade building. Mm-hmm. You walk on that floor, and I belonged there. Yeah. It was the greatest. I mean, you could scream and yell, you could throw things. You knew every time you did a trade, you had to be careful what you walked on by the pit because that's how you picked up the fills.
Right.
After they executed, they threw them on the floor and the runners picked them up and brought them back. So you had to be careful what you were picking up.
Right. The brokers had their orders folded in half according to price,
Absolutely.
time, and then when they were done, they would just throw it behind them,
Throw it
and
in the bag.
they would pick them up at the end of the day.
Right. And you're looking at the badges and you have no idea. I remember Irwin Gold, just a quick name, but I remember a guy had a badge ice. Another guy had a badge eat, another guy so on. So they were coming up with little, and I worked for Garvey Grain for a couple of months. And ironically, I saw somebody else that I went to school with, and they said to me, hey, upstairs, 3 floors up on the 7th floor is the CBOE. They do options. It's a longer day, but I think you can get 125 a week. Now, this is 1977.
Right.
I go upstairs and I meet with a gentleman who was just moved from floor manager to broker, and it was at Whiteweld. Now, many people won't remember Whiteweld, but Whiteweld was taken over by Merrill.
Okay.
So as I go up to meet this floor manager that now has his badge, that just got his badge, it was Joe Salito.
Oh my gosh. Another pillar of the community.
So Joe and I have been friends for 46 years.
Wow.
So he gave me 125 a week. Now I'm cooking.
That's incredible.
Now I'm cooking, but and this is how things work, because at Whiteweld, in those days you had teletype, where you had a ripper. Mm-hmm. The ripper would have the wire orders, but the other men and women would be on the phones. Well, to tell you, the 3 phone clerks that I learned from were quality. And I think as time goes on in this interview, and I'm sure many interviews, you start mentioning names of men and women and you realize, wait a minute, they became somebody else. They started here and they kept growing. I had 3 phone clerks that I worked with: Rick Maneris, Marno, who was in the S, Dookie, David Snyder, DWS, who became a market maker, and Tommy Wallace, Cassie, CAZ. So you've got 3 quality guys that I worked with who taught me that the blue ticket was the green ticket was a buy and the yellow ticket was a sell, and make sure that the broker in the crowd kept the green ticket, because that's how he got paid.
Right. Remember that.
So that, you're going through the motions. And I learned hand signals. And, there were no phones. And there were just a few puts coming into age.
Exactly.
So from there, Dookie left, became a market maker. Guys started moving. Rolla Johnson was our floor manager. He moved to New York. So now it's one of those things where very few, you never stayed really at one place for a long time, because somebody told you, hey, T-Mac is looking for guys, or Fondstock is looking for guys, or so on and so forth.
Fondstock, WLC Fondstock.
Right. So people are looking. Well, I had a guy that I knew, Peter Hines, who worked at Colin Hoxton, which was a stock firm. So I was already doing options. Peter said to me, I can give you more than 125 a week. Now I'm getting married also, so I've got to get some capital in my pocket.
Right.
So I began working at Colin Hoxton with Peter doing stock. And the difference between a stock desk and an option desk is you're going out to the crowd as an option. You're just handing it to the clerk, or to either the clerk or the floor broker. But when you're doing stock, you're going out to the market maker, you're giving them a quote, you're telling them who's on the bid, who's on the offer, you're actually conversing with them, and you're giving yourself an opportunity to meet these men and women.
Right.
That was very beneficial, because once I decided that, hey, I think I could be a market maker, you start studying, you're learning about, and so on. So in 1978, ironically, I think it was Valentine's Day, I took the test. And I have to include who was my fiance, going to be my wife for the next 45 years and onward. We put together whatever capital we had, and we said, look, we're going to give it a shot.
Wow.
Now, I was lucky enough to meet, when I was doing stock for people, I was lucky enough to meet Harry Brandt. And Harry and his brother and Monty Monister, they had the clearing firm, Blue Jacket, it was Brandt. So we would talk, and I talked about being a market maker, and I talked about, what we needed. And Harry couldn't have been nicer. He said to me, we have these little classes that we do. You take the class, you need X amount of capital, so on. February 78, I took the class, became a sole prop market maker. And just to let people who know me know that my badge was MFK. My badge was MFK. My middle name is not Francis. It was for my wife, who put up half the money. So it is Mitchell and Fern King.
Oh my gosh, that's terrific.
So that's really how we started.
Do you remember how much capital you needed to get started?
Absolutely. As if it was yesterday. You needed to take the test, which was $325, $350 at the time. You needed 3 months of seat leases, which was $500 each. So that's $1,500. And then you needed $5,000 to start. But you had to stay in the guidelines of Brandt, because he only wanted you to trade 1 lots, 2 lots, whatever it was, because he didn't want to go right down immediately.
Exactly. So what pit did you first step into, and how did you? Well, how would you explain? Other than the initial 1s and 2s, we're all learning how to do it. You have to pick a strategy eventually. It's boxes or butterflies or risk-free conversion reversals. It was whatever. Like everybody kind of did the same thing, but then morphed into other things. What was your style of trade?
Well, now you have to remember, it's 1978. A lot of the traders there were well capitalized, and they had already been in business before. They had a stockbroker, they had been stockbrokers. They had done other business before, so they were coming onto the floor. Many of them had bought the seat from the initial, so they were capitalized. I walked in only because I did stock for many of them. I walked into General Motors.
Got it.
Which turned out to be the best and worst mistake. In the beginning years, and I don't know if they did it for you, but you always walked into the crowd that was going to be your crowd, and everybody would give you an 8. You'd scream out the bid, the offer. You had 5, 6 guys gave you the 8. You made your first trade, and everybody then said good luck.
Right.
That was it. Now that's 1978. So, but I walked into the crowd, and it was like I never should have been there. Everybody liked me, but not to be a trader.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate. This was really very fortunate. I met a man who, one of the nicest you'll ever meet, in Lou Morgan.
I don't remember.
Now, many people won't know him because Lou was, he dates way back. So his badge was LOU, was a wonderful man with a big burly mustache. And he took me aside. He loved the name. He loved my MFK. He used to call me Mifka. And he took me aside and he said, listen, let's go up for lunch on the 7th floor. And don't forget, I'm a sole prop. I have very little capital. He said, and he explained the fact of why standing in General Motors was wrong. Their capital requirements, most of those guys, they stay there, they don't move. You're going to have to find a crowd of a young group of guys that don't mind you coming in doing 1s, 2s, and so on. And we would talk once a week, and he was a gentleman. Mm-hmm. He really, Lou Morgan, he was a gentleman. And the people who watch this or listen and they remember Lou Morgan, he was a gentleman. So from there, I was very fortunate. I walked around trying to find a crowd. I wound up, as hard as it may seem, I wound up in Bally's.
Good decision. That's what brought me
wound up in Bally's in those days, and I was very lucky because the guys that were there, Marty Dim, Craig Weil, Bert Brooks was there. To me, I introduced myself as a young guy. They were young. Bert was okay. He wasn't that young, but he was young.
Huh.
And I basically stayed out of their way and learned the business. And if you can remember, many of the stocks, Houston Oil, Bally's, a few others that I can't remember, they were duly listed. They were also on the Amex also.
Mm-hmm.
So you would look at that too. But I traded there for a little while and built up a little capital. And when I say a little, you got to remember, you're 23 years old, 24 years old, it's 1978. You make an eighth 10 times.
It's a lot of money.
You got a whole day.
Right.
You know, and I think that what I learned also was the fact that my mother and father worked all their lives. And you don't realize in a heartbeat, you make a quarter 10 times, you've got $250. It may take 5 minutes. And you could take that $250, put it in your pocket, and you can walk away and not come back until the next day.
Yeah. Did you feel any kind of guilt? Did you feel guilty because it was quote unquote easier to make money on the trading floor? You just showed up and you were buying on the bid, selling on the offer, you're making money, and here's your mom and dad just busting them, just killing themselves working for what, a hamburger patty on the table?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. My parents were hardworking guys. My mother was a bookkeeper. My father was a carpenter. And I always remember in the cold when he would be working out in the cold. And I would think to myself, man, you know, it's one of those crazy things that I would say, there by the grace of God go I. It was really something that somehow, some way, this happened to me.
Right.
And then you got to realize you got to make it work, because it ain't fun working in the cold.
Right.
So
what was it like then, you like rolling into the 80s? Let's get into, like, you know, 84, 82, the bull market began. You were already a seasoned trader at that time. Did you stay there? Did you move on to
well, we
other
got
business,
lucky.
floater?
I got lucky. I left Bally's because liquidity pretty much dried up. You know, multiple listings pretty much dried up. And I got lucky, and a lot of people are going to remember this. You walked into Boeing.
Mm-hmm.
And in those days, Boeing was the stock. Gary Knobloch, Richie Loya. I mean, it was unbelievable. And you did not, no disrespect to the people that traded every option. I had limited capital. We used to laugh. There were the Feb 75s, the Feb 80s, the Feb 85s. So it was one of those jokes when somebody would come in and say Feb 80s, yeah, that group is over here. You know, it was the joke because we were a limited capital group, and people would, but Boeing was the place where really helped me out. I crafted a trade of being a pretty good scalper, and it worked out. But to be quite honest, yeah, right after Boeing, I was fortunate enough, here we go again. The first and only time, because remember, I was a sole prop. So, you know, I was just a sole prop. And if I may go back just a step, remember, we're making money. You get $250 a day, $100 a day, so on and so forth. There's no W-2. There's no paycheck. There's nothing. All of a sudden, your account goes from $5,000 to $7,500. You know, you take that $2,500 out, it's not really $2,500, but you don't realize that. And you do realize that in the long run, but you don't realize it. But I was fortunate enough that I met two gentlemen, Erwin Ross and Dave Minter, and a third gentleman, Freddie Quinn.
Oh, yep.
And
another gentleman.
They had FP Quinn. And they back traders. I was there, and I walk into the office. I meet them. They had come up to me and said, "Listen, we think we can make you better." And again, when you talk about the fact of the clerks that I was with, now all of a sudden I'm moving into a group, and I've got the men. I got Richie Tobin, I got John Malone. I got an A list,
right?
And I'm going to be involved in that A list. Um, so I moved into with them. And then when you talk about reversals, conversions, things like that, I went from a scalper
Mm-hmm.
to a spreader to a reversal conversion to the box. So all those funny names that everybody puts together, be it Condor or all the rest.
Right.
And that I stayed with Dave and Irwin forever until FP Quinn
So, what
was
did you
over.
do in your spare time to relax or to unwind? Would you consider yourself a stoic type trader, or were you an emotional trader and you needed to, uh, go out and work out? You went to the health club during the day. Did you play music? Was it like what was your escape from the trading floor?
Well, I was very fortunate that my father gave me one bad habit. I love to go to the racetrack.
Oh boy. Okay.
And so did a lot of other guys on the trading floor, I have to tell you. And that was the way, we had a great time. So I would go there. Many of the guys that we'd go, be it Saturday and Sunday, but you could also, this is public now, so I'd have to say it anyways, but there were times that after the day, be it 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, you were perfectly balanced, everything was fine. You would go out for the last four, and relax yourself. It was fun.
Right.
That was it. But of course, I also had a responsibility because I kept having kids. I have three great boys, and like I say, Fern, my wife, and so I really, it was. That's how I did it, I guess.
Yeah, I'd say, Mitch, that for the most part, despite the rumors of incredible amounts of cocaine and prostitutes and fast cars and all this crazy stuff, I mean, I did not see that happen. We have a bad reputation from watching like The Wolf of Wall Street and these other shows and movies that make the glamorous downside and dark side. Now, I'm not saying that didn't happen. I'm just saying I didn't know anybody that did that, and it was a pretty yeah, maybe you buy a nice car, but it wasn't crazy what you see in the movies. So that you just pretty much you showed up every day. You were a little bit like me, like a carpenter. You show up, you work, and you go home. We're raising a family, married. I pretty much did the same thing. And just for me, like sleep or taking a nap during the day or playing Tetris was like my downtime. And raising a family also took a lot out of me, but as it does most guys, right? Because the kids are up early, they're crying, right? You're feeding, and I mean, you're picking up the baby and bringing it to your wife or whatever, and that whole thing, like everybody goes through that when they're raising a family and working. But so let's jump then to the to like the '87 crash. What were how do you remember '87? Were you did you have a couple of free puts to the downside because you're an arbitrageur and maybe you've got some small puts down there that you worked out well, or did you just, like some people, no, I'm not judging here. Did you just say, all right, I'm done, I'm going to come back in a week or a month? Like, tell me some things you remember about like the '87 crash and '89 mini crash.
Well, it's interesting. Even in '84 and on, I focused on being a reversal conversion. I focused on, there was no problem lifting a leg, whatever. And I was in United, Schlumberger, Oxy, that group. Great people in that group, actually. And one of my philosophies, nobody like David Irwin, I remember, hated it, but I had so many reversals and conversions. If they didn't turn in and to the traders, they understand that many of them turn into a box and you have no stock left, be it the near term and the far term. But I would lose that teeny almost every expiration. And remember, to a lot of people now, expiration is monthly. Ours were 3 months.
Right.
It was 3 months. So I would lose that teeny because I would turn it into a synthetic. And it's possible. Same way, I would always be a cabinet buyer. In the old days, you used to have the cabinet.
Right.
I would always be a cabinet buyer because that would be my one edge. And that's how we do it. Sure, we'd always buy the little puts or the little calls. And and that was it. So from, I guess, without getting too, you could understand that in 87, lifting a leg on one side, if it's the right leg, you were going to be okay.
Right.
I think that one of the things about 87 was, yes, many people made money, many people lost money, uh, many people changed careers. It was tough.
Right.
It was tough. But I guess we could say that 44 years I'm still here and I was on the floor. So I must have done something right for a while.
Right. Some people have longevity, and some made it big and got out and did other things. So there was like a lot of different exit plans, and some
Right.
people.
But I want to, I guess the thing is that in regards to the trading floor, every day was a new day.
It was so much fun.
And I think that that's what, one of the reasons you woke up every day. And the other thing is you didn't need inventory. You could walk in, and if you didn't like the position at 3 o'clock, you can close it.
Yeah.
You start again with your equity and you get to play again the next day.
Right. Every day was a begin again, which was awesome.
Right. And I think that's what made it so exciting. So it gave you a reason to get up in the morning. I mean, there was a reason that you guys in the OEX got there before the gates opened to put your card down.
I was having a conversation with my children, ages 32 down to 21, and we were talking about white privilege. We were just talking about all sorts of subjects at the dinner table, and I understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, my kids were too young to remember me getting up at 3:30 in the morning,
Yeah.
driving downtown, parking in the South Loop, walking in the dark and the bad neighborhood in Chicago,
Right.
sitting outside the options exchange before they would open up the doors, so I could sit inside for another hour and wait for the gates to open to go up to the trading floor at 6 o'clock and put a little card down the
Right.
size of an envelope to mark my spot and go. And while I'm raising kids and taking care of my wife who had some health issues at the time, and the grind was, and then stand and trade and shout for 6 hours a day.
Right.
It's
But
physically exhausting, emotionally exhausting, financially exhausting. I would never trade it for anything in the world. But
no.
when you're going through it, it can be a little bit hairy.
Right. See, I never actually traded in the index. I was always an equity trader. So, there were 6 of us in the crowd.
It's a country club.
And we didn't really, there were 6 of us and there were 6 next to us in Slob. And some of the greatest men that, you'll ever know, that stood there and we would talk and there was a camaraderie from 8 o'clock in the morning until 3 o'clock. Yeah, you didn't have to go out to dinner with anybody. You didn't have, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody, there was a camaraderie. But listen, you had to have your own equity. You had to put your capital on the line.
Yeah.
And some people will say, I love it. My kids, and I'm sure yours did too, that when we had the holiday parties, and you could come down at half a day during Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever it is, you used to take the trading cards, they were hard cards at the time, not electronic, and you would try to throw them in the chute.
Yeah.
And you would try to throw them in the chute. And my sons, all 3 of them, would see their dad throw these things in the chute. And they would try. So in many ways, you would think it was a game.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was.
Yeah.
But in those seconds, those split seconds that you had to make a decision, there aren't many people that could do that.
Yeah. It's better to be first than it was to be right. And my 2 older children remember coming down on Saturdays and bringing them to the trading floor for rate checking sessions, pre-expiration. And we took them to Lou Mitchell's for breakfast and then headed back home again. So they had those great memories. The older 2, by that time I'd already moved off the floor, and they just remember, well, Dad doesn't do anything for a living. He just sits in front of a computer and he drinks Cokes, like he has bagels and cream cheese. So how is he contributing to the world economy? I'm like, guys, you have no idea.
Right.
So like, what are you doing today? I mean, I'm sorry that I've got about 10 more minutes, Mitch. I know I definitely going to have to do a second session with you. I feel like we just had this huge gap, but something popped up last minute. I'm going to have to. But so tell me
Oh,
what
no,
you're
I
doing
have no
today, and
problem.
I wanna follow up again. But go ahead.
When I left the floor, in 90, I went upstairs to trade for a little while, but in 97, um, I got involved with a gentleman in New York, Sam Leck, who was on the Amex, and he was putting together a trading platform for both upstairs traders and downstairs traders.
Mhm.
He had heard my name because I was trading upstairs. We had a phone call, we had a conversation. And again, Larry Berlin said the best thing you could say, we don't have resumes. Our word is our bond.
Our word is our bond.
Um, and it's funny, and I'm going to interject this because I have never had a resume until recently when I decided, hey, I'm going to get out in the world and see what's out there today.
I was 52 before I had my first resume.
Right,
But go ahead.
right, right. As I say to the people, when I go on LinkedIn and I actually have a resume, I said, I can't believe it. I had 3 jobs in 44 years.
I know. I know.
But Sam and I and some other people got together. We had a trading platform. We turned it into a clearing firm,
Mhm.
and I was there until 2020. And Lex Securities is still around, but I am not with Lex, and I am, as I laugh, a free agent, but I still love the game.
Right.
I don't want to uh, make it sound, but to me, I've always called it a game. Yes, it's a business, it's a profession.
Mhm.
But if I take it any other way than a game, because to me, it's fun every day, because every day is a new adventure.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, yes, there's always things I wish I could go back and do again. I wish I would have taken a little bit more risk. I wish I would have paid more attention to my expenses. I wish I would have learned more of the theoretical side to see what my daily option decay was, the theta number, because I was always a long gamma trader, and I
Right,
didn't know that there was like math to that,
right,
that there's a formula of when you should be hedging and when you shouldn't be hedging, or
right.
maybe being short more premium and just babysitting the position. There's definitely things I wish I would have done differently because I was so stuck and I so did not want to lose money. I would again come from a very blue collar family, and
Right.
I went to work, I traded, and I came home, and had some good years, some great years. Most of
Right.
them were just very kind of average. I mean,
Well, I'm going to
I'm
tell you.
doing pretty good for a guy with like an associate degree. You know what
Wait
I'm
a
saying?
minute. I'm going to tell you something. And I'm going to tell you this is your older brother. Don't sell yourself short, and don't wish you would have done something different, because what you've done, what I've done, and what guys that have stayed on the floor or guys that have stayed on the floor and reinvented themselves,
Mhm.
I don't think we could turn around and say what we should have done, because to me, I think we pretty much did
I
everything
know.
right.
I know. I get it. I mean, there's a philosophical and
Right, right,
universal thing movement here. I
right,
totally understand what you're saying, Mitch. Really, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying I think that I used the fact that I loved being a box trader or reversal and conversion guy. I loved it because it was very little risk. But
right,
really behind that, that was my excuse. I really had a little bit some fear, right?
right,
My dad and his business, and like I said, he worked like an animal. He had to borrow $10 every week to fill up his car with gas, and I pushed him out of the up until the late '70s. I was still pushing my dad out of the driveway, out of our house,
right.
so that he could like get out of the snow and get started with his pickup truck. So I think maybe I could have. I wish I would have conquered a little bit of the fear I think I had of losing money, and just again reflection, right? That's what this podcast
Yeah,
is
no,
about.
I hear you. I mean, look, I have 3 married sons. I have 4 grandchildren. I have a wife of over 44 years. I got to tell you, I did something right. I
Yeah,
may not have, I may not have bought in all the teenies I should have bought in '87, but I did something right.
right. Well, some of the teenies I was short, I bought back from Paul Evans from CRT at
Sure.
about $47. I think that was the price during opening
Right.
rotation, and I was glad to have them at the time. So we're all those kind of. So do you stay in touch with anybody, Mitch? Now, I mean,
I do.
you left the
I
floor in
stay.
2020. That's still like yesterday.
Oh, yeah, no, I still stay in touch with a handful of traders and some that I made friends with for years, but they're the old names, just like we said about Joe. Jog your memory from Bells, from Kenny Bellavia, and all those boys. Matt Flipovich, I talked to because we did a lot of business together as when I was at Lex Security. So yeah, I still talk to a few people, but
Any
uh,
crazy stories you can end with, or uh, just something that maybe you took a note before the interview and you're like, I want to make sure I get to this before we close.
there probably as you put me on the spot, I wish I could, but no, it was just 1976. You walk on. It's 2022. I'm sitting here talking to you, and we're talking about. And I hate to use the phrase, but allow me. It's the greatest business you could ever be in.
Yeah.
It was. Now, of course, it's changed, but it's the greatest business. My two of my sons are in the business as financial advisors.
Right.
Um,
I met your son at
uh,
an event
yeah, that's
a number
right.
of years ago. Right.
So, and I get to see a lot of guys still because I go to some of the events. When I get a chance to see JJ, when I get a chance to see Kinahan give a speech, Scott Connor,
Right.
I get to say hello to Sassy and the boys.
I'm sorry.
It's a lot of fun
It
still.
is.
I really do. But I like the game. So I guess if I was to leave with something, I'm on LinkedIn. If anybody wants to say hello, I'd be happy to say hello. I appreciate it. I appreciate this, Billy. Thank you. Uh, I hope I didn't. I don't think I forgot anything. I've got a
No,
few more things whenever
this
you're
was
ready,
great.
though.
I need more time with you though, Mitch, to be honest with you. I know there's a lot more stored in that head of yours, and I want to pull it out in
Yes,
another
I have.
episode. But yeah, feel free to, you reached out to me in LinkedIn, but you saw a post that I put on our Facebook group, the Overheard at CBOE, saying I wanted to interview people. So this is really great. I'm glad that you reached out. I'm glad that we had this time to talk. I appreciate your gratitude of this life experience that we had, and that's really terrific. And
Yeah.
I'm
Thank you.
sincerely, I am going to contact you again, and we're going to do a second episode because I know there's so much more to talk about, and I really appreciate your time.
Oh, I appreciate it, Billy, and best. Thank you very much.
All right, man. We'll see you around, Mitch. Thank you so much. That's it. I'll chat with you. I'll chat with you again soon.
Thank you. Thank you.